Hello everyone, my name is Marcelo and this video will learn how to use the Forms AI feature from UiPath. So as it says here on the post, it's a feature that allows us to extract data from documents with a fixed layout. So we basically indicate the values that we want to get from one of these documents that we upload to Forms AI, and then Forms AI trains the model in seconds behind the scenes to recognize those values on other samples. So first, to use Forms AI, we need to enable document understanding service. So to enable it, let's click here on admin. And now here on tenants, make sure that you enable here on tenant settings the option document understanding. So after you enable it, will appear here the option document understanding. So let's click on it. And let's create here a new project. And now let's define here the project name. And here on OCR method, let's leave the one already selected. So UiPath document OCR. So we have already created the project. So now next step, let's open it. And from here, let's create the extractor that will use Forms AI. So to use Forms AI, we have here two options. We can click here on Start Now or click here on New and click on option using Forms AI. And now let's define here the name and let's click on Save. Now we need to upload some document samples. So let's use the ones from the UiPath post. So I leave here on the description of this video the link to this post. And you can download the samples here where it says Quick Start Guide. So we just need to click here to download the doc samples. So let's upload them. So let's click here on Browse Files to upload. And now let's here select the documents that we have downloaded from the UiPath post. And now that the samples are uploaded, let's click here on Next. And now we just need to wait a bit. So now that the samples are added successfully, let's click again on Next. And now we can see here one of the samples, and also we can notice that Forms AI already it's extracting some values from the document, like the name, the current name address, also the previous address. So Forms AI it's already extracting here some fields. So let's learn now how we can remove some fields that are being extracted. So to remove, let's click here, for example, here on signatory attest that. So let's click here to edit. And to delete, it's just by clicking here on the delete button. Let's also delete this one. And transcript also. So currently it's being extracted the name, the current address, the previous address, the first social security number, and the second one. So here we don't have the number, but we have the first one. So let's say that we want to add a field. So let's imagine that the first social security number was not mapped here. So let's delete it. And now let's learn how we can add a new field. So let's click here on Add Field, and here let's define the field name, first social security, for example. And now we need to assign the value to this field. So first let's select the value. And now we need to press on the key that appears here. So let's click on the keyboard, on the key F. And as we can see, it's being now extracted the value to this field. So it's very simple to set up here the Forms AI to extract data from our documents. So now let's move on to the next document. And now let's click here on predict to see how it's extracting the custom machine learning model. And as you can see, it's extracting as expected. So let's move on to the next. And let's use again the predict. Again, extraction successful. So let's move on to the next document. Let's just remove the second social security field as the value doesn't appear on the document. And so now let's click on predict again to use the custom machine learning model. And again, extraction successful. Let's move on to the last document that we have uploaded. And let's use again the predict. So we can notice that the model is extracting well the fields from each document, so we can publish it. So let's click here on publish, and here extractor name. So let's define the name of the extractor. And now let's click on publish. And let's click on close. So now let's create a project on UiPath Studio to use here our custom machine learning model to extract data from these documents. So let's open UiPath Studio and let's use the template for document understanding. So let's click here on more templates and let's filter here by official and let's click here on document understanding process. Let's click on use template. And here on the process name can be, for example, forms AI. And let's click on create. So now we have basically everything ready. So we just need to change some things on the template. So first, let's drag for our project folder the files that we will use, so the ones that we have downloaded from the post of UiPath forum. So we have now documents on the project folder. And now first we need to define the taxonomy of our documents. So let's open the taxonomy manager. And now here on structured documents, let's add a new document type. So let's here enter the document type name. So as we can see here, let's enter this name. And now let's click here on the document and let's add the fields. So first field, the name. And the field type, it's name. Let's click on save. Next one, so the current address. Let's add here a new field. Field type, address. Let's add another field for the previous address. And the last one for the social security number. So now that we have defined the taxonomy, let's close the taxonomy manager. And now that we have defined the taxonomy, let's use here the sequence main attended instead of the main action center. So let's open the main attended and let's mark it as main, set as main. Let's open it now. So here are a couple of things that we have to change. So we can start on the classification. So we could avoid it because we are only using one document type, but let's use it anyways. And now here on intelligent keyword classifier, let's copy what we have here on learning file path. And let's paste it here on the stick notes, for example. And now let's click on manage learning and let's click on yes. Let's select the learning file. So here let's search for our project. So the learning file should be here on document processing. So let's select here intelligent keyword learning file. And now let's import. And now here we can see our document type that we have created on the taxonomy. So let's start the training. So let's upload the files that we have. And now let's click here on start training. And let's just wait a bit. Training done. Let's click here on save. And now let's close here the classify workflow. So now we need to set up the extraction to use the forms AI. So let's here on extract, open the workflow. So here we can see that we have already some extractors. So let's delete them first. And so to use the forms AI, a machine learning model that we have created, we need to use the machine learning extractor activity. And let's drag it inside of the data extraction scope. So let's provide first the endpoint. So very important here, we need to copy the endpoint from our forms AI custom machine learning model. So to get the endpoint, let's open here our project that we have created on documents understanding. And then here, extractors, let's click here and we can copy the endpoint. So let's paste it here. And now let's click here on get capabilities. And now if we click here on configure extractors, we can see some documents. So let's here open the one that we have created on the taxonomy. And if we click here, we can see the field names that we have on forms AI. So if we open here, we can see that the fields that appears here on the configure extractors are the ones from forms AI. So here name is related to the field name shown on tax return. Current address, it's the field current name address. Previous address is the field previous address shown. And social security number, it's for the field first social security. So let's save what we have did here. And now let's store our endpoint on the config file. So to get the config file, let's click here on data and let's open the config file. And now here, let's add another entry. So with the name here, forms AI endpoint. And now let's paste here the endpoint that we have here. And now we just need to call here our config dictionary. And let's call for the key related to our endpoint. Then here the API key. So let's also use the config. We have here entry on our config file on assets that will search for the asset with the name document understanding API key. So we will create asset to store the API key that we have for document understanding. So let's copy here the key. And now let's create asset on orchestrator. So let's open orchestrator. And now here on assets, let's create an asset with the same name as it's expected here on the config file. And so we want to store the API key. So let's get it. So to get our API key, let's click here on admin. Now here, let's click on license, robots is service, and let's copy here the API key. And now let's paste it here and let's click on create. So we have the asset already created. So now let's close here the config file. Let's save it. And also let's save here our sequence. So let's see if it's running well, our project. So let's execute it from the main attended workflow. And now appeared here this window. So now let's indicate the file to process. So we got here an error because of asset that doesn't exist on orchestrator that we have here on our config file. So let's open here the config file. So here we can see that we have some assets. So let's create them quickly. So here, let's add another asset. So let's copy here the expected name. So it's to be Boolean. So here we can see the description. So it's expected to be true or false. So bool. And so let's leave false. Let's add another one. Here bool. Let's select the false, create. The next one, let's create it. And now the last one, so let's add it. So let's execute again our project. So let's stop it first. And now let's execute our automation. So let's indicate a file to process. And now we can see here the classification station. So we can see that classification is not right. So let's select here our document type. So it's this one. So now let's click on save. And now we can see here the validation station, and we can see that the values are extracted successfully. So as extracted name, current address, previous address, and social security number. So now we can click on save. And now if we go here to Forms AI, so let's click on document understanding. Let's open the project, and on extractors, we can see that was treated a document with Forms AI. So let's try just another document. So let's execute the project again. Let's indicate other document. Classification station again. Let's indicate the right classification. Let's click on save. And now we can see that extraction was again successful. So now on the project panel, if we click here on the refresh, and here on the data folder, let's open the exports. We can see that was created to Excel files that has the data extracted from each document. So, if you liked this video, smash the like button, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more UiPath tutorials. And now I leave here on the screen a playlist with UiPath tutorials. So, if you want to learn more about UiPath, I suggest to click on the playlist and see the tutorials.